Hey there, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. And I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. The EduData podcast is your no-fluff guide to the data driving higher education. Forget about data silos and disconnected stacks. Timothy Davis and Jamie Boggs, two of Element 451's data analysis experts, bring you straight into the heart of the numbers that matter. With sharp commentary and rigorous research, our hosts break down complex data points and actionable insights you can use. Whether you're an administrator, educator, or just a higher ed enthusiast, EduData is your key to unlocking the data behind academia. New episodes drop every Friday morning, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search the EduData podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Mastering the Next, a cutting-edge podcast that explores the future of graduate, online, and non-traditional education through the lens of AI and technology. I'm your host, Dr. Ray Lutsky, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the thought leaders shaping the future of graduate enrollment management through technology. Mastering the Next is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that helps institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Understanding strategic graduate enrollment management can be challenging, even for experienced professionals. Well, there's a new book that's just come out that explores every facet of graduate enrollment management, from outreach to student success, drawing from academic research and professional practices. The book is titled A Comprehensive Guide to Graduate Enrollment Management, Advancing Research and Practice, and I'm joined by the co-editors, Dr. Joseph Paris, Dean of the School of Graduate and Professional Studies at Delaware Valley University, and Dr. Stanley Kania, Assistant Dean of Admissions and Assistant Professor in the Department of Family, Community, and Preventative Medicine at Drexel University College of Medicine. Joe, Stan, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ray.
It's great to have you. So your book explores various aspects of graduate enrollment management today from your perspective as editors. What's the next challenge this book addresses for graduate enrollment professionals?
Graduate students are evolving just like their undergraduate counterparts. It's an incredibly complex environment in this post-COVID era, and institutions are going to be increasingly focused on how to bolster revenue because of shortfalls at the undergraduate level due to demographic changes. But we're also really focused on a savvy consumer, focused on convenience, on price sensitivity, on flexibility as they pursue graduate degrees, and balancing graduate education with their lives, which are also increasingly complicated and complex. And so institutions need to grapple with that. And we really, in the book, examine how the graduate student journey evolves from the very beginning of that process all the way through degree conferral and beyond. And so institutions are going to be grappling with how do you offset potential declines at the undergraduate level and offset that with graduate students. Evolving offerings like micro-credentials and stackable credentials as ways of allowing working professionals to access the kinds of competencies they need for their work professionally, and to do so in an inexpensive and swift way to be able to take what they learn and immediately apply it to the work that they do professionally.
I think it's interesting to see how many myriad challenges there are, from things going on in the market to financial aspects, and just is a lot coming at folks. And I know that there are resources out there like NAGAP the Association for Graduate Enrollment Management, that has been really supportive of this book and is helped publish it. How did that partnership come about with NAGAP?
So the partnership with NAGAP and the project, right, was really a long time in the making. So to kind of go back in time here a little bit, if you'll indulge me for a minute. Back in 2015, as you know, NAGAP first published a white paper looking at the integrated interdependence model of GEM, which was really adapted from its undergraduate counterpart, looking at a holistic model of strategic enrollment management encompassing all the cross-functional areas of GEM. So admissions, student affairs, alumni relations, financial aid, et cetera, et cetera. Since then, GEM practitioners and scholars alike began conducting research within the GEM field to really address and answer complex problems that arose in our profession. And fast forward to today, we've begun to really see shifts and trends in the higher education market space that point to and highlight the importance of GEM as a strategic priority for sustainability in enrollment headcount and net tuition revenues. Thus, the idea for NAGAP and GEM professionals to add value to the field through the creation of this book was truly born. So then it all started back in fall of 2019 when an initial call for proposals was disseminated by Jeremiah Nelson, who was the project leader at that time. And as we transitioned into the spring 2020 semester, we all know and experience the world coming to a screeching halt with the COVID-19 pandemic, and higher education, like many industries, began to pivot into crisis mode in different ways that we never thought were possible, especially for our field in higher education. Fast forward then to fall 2021, Jeremiah actually reached out to Joe and myself to inquire about our interest in taking on the roles of co-editors for the project. And after speaking with Jeremiah independently, both Joe and I initially had the same response. As long as the other guy is in, I'm in. So at that point, we worked with Jeremiah in transitioning over leadership responsibilities for the project, and we launched a new call for proposals in May of 2022. And then from there, Joe and I worked with contributing authors on the development of their chapters and case studies. And the end result is this fantastic publication that you see before you today.
It's a labor of love, right? The expertise and the insights that our contributors shared were so generous and insightful for us. I learned as much from having the opportunity to edit this book as I hope that readers will have as they read the chapters within it. Maybe our next edition is how to edit a book, because we learned a lot ourselves about the process of working with authors and helping them develop and refine their work, but then also ensure that this is a comprehensive guide, and thus the name of the book itself, to really identify where there could be content gaps. And certainly no book is complete. There's always opportunity for a field evolving like graduate enrollment management for us to continue to think about where there are content gaps and what the future looks like for research and practice in the field.
Maybe you should write that next book, because it looked like you got incredible submissions from some real thought leaders. And for those who get a chance to look at the book, you'll see what I mean when each chapter has got sometimes multiple authors who are really well respected and knowledgeable in graduate enrollment management today. And you're both highly knowledgeable about graduate enrollment management. So I want to kind of pick your brains. You understand where it is, where it's going. From that perspective, how do you feel what those thought leaders said in your book sets it apart as a resource for professionals?
What we found when not only reading the contributions and working with the authors, we found through our own work as researchers and scholar practitioners that a whole lot less has been written about graduate enrollment management than undergraduate enrollment management, and thus presented an opportunity to really understand the impact the field has on the student life cycle, the student journey, and how graduate enrollment management is practiced across different institutional contexts. What's important about this book is the very fact that it's comprehensive. Other resources and some fantastic resources have been written, not only about undergraduate enrollment management, but about specific stages of the graduate student journey. The individual who wrote the foreword in our book, Dr. Julie Posselt, is an amazing scholar who wrote a book in 2016 focused on the faculty role in graduate admissions. And so we saw a tremendous opportunity to look beyond the admissions process, but the entire graduate student journey from the initial point of interest to their decision to apply, the selection of applications, all the way through to the point they achieve success and graduate from their respective institution. So we look across the entire life cycle of a student, but then also do so in a number of ways. The book includes empirical investigations of questions that have persisted in the field, right? From how test optional admissions impacts and shapes an entering class of graduate students, to what do graduate students think of the application process and how they're being evaluated for admission. But we also include case studies, problems of practice that graduate enrollment management professionals are likely to encounter in their day-to-day work, and how institutions have grappled with those challenges, and in many cases came to a successful conclusion, a successful resolution.
Joe, let me just jump in there for a second, because that's very interesting how you blend both the academic and practical experience in this work. And I'm just curious where that came from. And certainly there's an academic element to everything going on with graduate enrollment management, but how did you balance that in the book?
Yeah, first, I'll acknowledge that idea came from the original call for proposals. Originally, NAGAP asked for vignettes, real life examples that are happening within institutions of higher education and various challenges that those institutions are confronting in their work, coupled with empirical research, applied literature reviews, analysis of the literature, synthesis of the literature, and then empirical investigations and original research we present within the book. So it's important that we felt that the book not only contribute scholarly evidence to the field, but also equally serve the needs of professionals who may take these new understandings and apply it in their day-to-day work.
And to kind of go on top of that, as Joe mentioned, I think that adding in those case studies and that professional and practical element is one that really sets this book apart. We all know that sometimes reading a purely scholarly book or scholarly resource maybe isn't the most riveting thing to read. So being able to take a practitioner lens is going to add some more context to it, where professionals can sit back and say, okay, I read a chapter that focuses more on a scholarly lens. And then now through this case study, I could see how some of the theories that were mentioned were put into practice. And as we see higher ed evolve with the myriad of challenges that we face and we can anticipate facing, higher education professionals, specifically GEM professionals, can see how other institutions of various sizes can take different approaches to similar problems, but then they as a practitioner can sit back and see and think, how could I apply it to the context of my institution, of my parameters, to fit our strategic priorities? So I think that adding in that case study element was one that was, I think, very vital to the overall success of the book and adding a depth and breadth of value to it.
That's great. And I guess that's why you can call it comprehensive, because you've added such value on multiple dimensions of what a professional might need to fully appreciate the complexities of graduate enrollment management. And let me dive into something very specific in the book. In part 3, you're talking about graduate enrollment planning and operations from different perspectives. And there are some case studies there that specifically deal with and talk about technology and advancement of technology in graduate enrollment management. Can you tell us a little bit more about that part of the book?
So that part of the book, some of the case studies and chapters, highlight the importance of technology as a function of higher ed operations and overall productivity and efficiency of different functional areas within graduate enrollment management. And us as practitioners understand the value, but also the necessity of technology in our daily work. And I think that when we think of technological advancement, it coincides with some of the challenges that we are anticipating or forecasting higher education to possibly be facing in the next few years. So A prime example right now is we've seen the emergence of artificial intelligence immensely across different industries. We've seen ChatGPT come into the fold in higher education. So looking at it from perhaps the holistic admissions lens, how are we going to be able to evaluate applicants holistically when we look at their application essays if they are using AI generation and AI technologies? How are we going to be able to really tell if an applicant is truly mission fit, if they really share the ideals and the values of our institutions? Uh, you know, Combining it with their own personal journey and their own personal background. From another vantage point, how could we use AI technology in things like chatbots for triaging admissions questions and understanding what could be answered by a chatbot and what needs to be escalated to an admissions professional or a higher up for further investigation or further assistance? How can technology in our CRM systems be used to enhance efficiency for student enrollment, whether it be the registrar's office or the bursar's office, or using it throughout the student life cycle when a student matriculates from the admissions office standpoint into the student affairs standpoint in their office. So there is a myriad of challenges that are presented through technology and how we envision technology being used and its adaptation and its evolution is going to be, I think, interesting to look at it from a practitioner lens, but also from the future challenges. What's going to be coming up? How can we leverage technology? Is it really going to answer all of those questions, or will technology just add layers of complexity within those questions? Meaning, does it really solve all of our problems, or does it just add one more thing to the bucket list of things that keep you up at night?
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news! I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times bestselling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student-centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
It's really interesting to think that all this change in technology and how it creates new opportunities for student engagement is still a bit of an unknown. And the industry, the profession is going to have to adapt to that as new technologies like artificial intelligence and AI enabled CRMs are adopted. And what that means for the day-to-day of a graduate enrollment management professional is something we're watching. And I think that may be a good subject for your next book if you're thinking about it. But from your work on the current book, what technological improvements do you see coming down the pike that will make the biggest impact on graduate enrollment management and graduate education?
Yeah, in the book, we explained that at many institutions, graduate enrollment management is a highly decentralized function. In other words, graduate enrollment management is primarily practiced within individual academic programs, academic departments, and occasionally in schools and colleges, and rarely at a centralized level, especially near larger institutions, right? Grad enrollment management being decentralized, there's often an economies of scale issue, which is within an individual graduate program, there may be a lack of technological expertise, financial resources, human resources to be able to execute particular strategies. And so, what technology allows institutions to achieve, I believe, is greater economies of scale. The idea of mass customization, going back to my earlier point about the needs of graduate students today, the needs for flexibility, for personalization, for the ability to balance their studies in life. One way for technology to be able to help is to be able to communicate more effectively in a more personalized manner how the institution can address those specific needs, especially if students are deciding whether to pursue graduate studies or not. In some of the research that I've conducted, we find that actually it's not necessarily a matter of this institution or that institution, but whether graduate school is right for me at this point in my life, at this time. And so technology allows institutions to be able to communicate the value proposition in ways that are more personalized, right? Back to Stan's earlier point about artificial intelligence, about being able to message in more customized ways at a greater scale, which is very difficult historically to do in a very decentralized model where there may be limited resources in terms of marketing expertise, in terms of personnel, in terms of bandwidth and time capacity to be able to execute highly personalized campaigns.
The idea that we're trying to create opportunities for students to feel like we're talking right to them. And that is a great way not only to encourage them to enroll, but to promote their engagement, their persistence to graduation, particularly in graduate programs, as we all know, that can be incredibly challenging and taxing and sometimes feel like a slog to get there. I think anyone who has a doctorate understands that, and how, as much as you might love it, there are moments where you really need someone to give you a word of encouragement, and that personalization can really help create a connection with those students. Your book also addresses some existential questions for graduate enrollment management for GEM. You mentioned a few of them at the beginning, but how should professionals address some of these threats, like funding issues or the undergraduate enrollment cliff and what that means for graduate students? How should, do you think, based on the book, professionals sort of prepare to address these existential challenges?
Sure. And thanks, Ray. I think this book really does a good job at providing such a comprehensive overview of GEM that it really allows readers and professionals to think more strategically about these complex questions and draw from practical examples and scholarly research to help begin to come up with answers or strategies to tackle these issues. So for example, when we're looking at the undergrad enrollment cliff, Joe talked a little bit about it before. Some of the case studies and chapters present and illuminate ideas and ways to bolster grad enrollment management strategies and practices to really help alleviate some of the negatives from declines of predicted undergrad enrollment management. It also allows our professionals to use this information to arm them with different ways to advocate for the resources needed to accomplish these strategic priorities and goals, such as accessible services, ways that we can support enhancing and improving graduate enrollment management to meet net tuition revenue goals. Some of the case studies really address some of the more practical ways that higher education institutions and professionals have answered and addressed some similar challenges. Some examples in the book would be, The Function of the Registrar's Office by Jennifer Hewitt, or how Jay Stefanelli at Rutgers University implemented a one-stop model for integrated student services for graduate students. So again, looking at how is all of this going to really impact graduate students, the life cycle of students, and looking at the other part of the question, from funding issues. We all understand that, yes, we need to prioritize graduate student enrollment to help offset some of those potential declines from declining undergrad enrollment. But more importantly now than ever, we see grad students are playing the higher ed version of the Price is Right and looking at price as part of their cost benefit analysis and helping them decide where to go, especially for smaller, more regional universities that's very tuition dependent for their operating revenues. Enrollment sometimes can be the factor that allows them to continue or sometimes face some really difficult decisions. So looking at it from a net tuition standpoint, it allows, grad enrollment managers to step back and say, well, how can we ensure we have adequate funding to support student scholarships to get students to enroll? How is that funding going to be allocated for our incoming students, for our current, returning students? So I think those are some of the challenges that we're going to be facing in higher education and grad enrollment management. And the book starts to think of these questions and starts to lay the foundation for answering them as we continue working towards individual solutions at our respective institutions.
Working through the book, you have a big group of thought leaders kind of contributing to the conclusion across a variety of different kinds of institutions. And they're reflecting on future directions, kind of what you just implied, what's coming next, what is the role of research, what's going to happen in practice for graduate enrollment. And I'm just curious, given our conversation here, kind of going back to something you already mentioned a bit, how would this relate to technology? When you look at the future and you reflect on the future of graduate enrollment management, what do you think that next book is going to be talking about, if I can make it the presumption that there'll be a next book?
Yeah, as comprehensive as the book may be, there are still gaps in coverage. There's still questions that remain unanswered that we feel are critical for better understanding and continuing to advance research and practice in the field. For example, the book describes the utilization of technology, but it's evolving so quickly that it's going to take likely many editions of a book such as this one for us to really understand how technology is utilized in the context of graduate enrollment management. And that's not only because of technological advancement, but it's also because, to my earlier point, grad enrollment management is a highly decentralized function at many institutions. And that means there's wide variability in how it's practiced. So, for instance, the way in which graduate enrollment management may be practiced in the context of a creative writing MFA program may be highly different than an MBA program at the very same institution. And thus, then, the way in which technology plays a role in the practice of graduate enrollment management may also be highly variable, even within the same institution. And so, to understand that, there is still a need for a more comprehensive effort to be able to drill down to the very programs that are practicing grad enrollment management to better understand the implications of what an equitable grad enrollment management system looks like, what an effective system looks like, and even the structures. There were renewed efforts following the 2015 integrated interdependence model, which really set the groundwork for future research. There were renewed efforts to think about what the contemporary structure of grad enrollment management looks like today. And it so happens that the co-authors of the last chapter that you're referencing, Ray, are some of those individuals who contributed to the very conceptualization of the integrated interdependence model back in 2015. And so we thought there were no better colleagues to partner with on a final future-looking chapter than those who started sort of this line of inquiry for many years, which set the stage of understanding grad enrollment research. And again, understanding how grad enrollment management is practiced across many different contexts.
Stan, you want to add anything?
The only thing I would add is, and to kind of just go on top of what Joe said, we do have some content gaps. But one of the things that I personally am excited to possibly see in a future iteration of this book is really more so, how do we plan for the unexpected in higher education, i.e., crisis management, crisis leadership? How do we work through these unique challenges that sometimes there's no plan Z as to no contingency plan as to how do we operate if ABC happens? We've all experienced living and operating through the pandemic. those challenges. And I feel like, the word pivot was on everyone's COVID-19 bingo card. So I think that one thing that we're looking at as leaders and administrators is, how do we come up with these plans and these different contingencies in the event that ABC happens? I think that that's going to be definitely an area that I personally would like to see explored more in future research of graduate enrollment management. But again, there are a number of different areas that can be expanded upon and explored. But I think that this book really lays the foundation for not only scholarly inquiry, but also for practitioner-oriented inquiry as well. Understanding that the true value that most of our colleagues get are those practitioner-based articles, those practitioner-based presentations at conferences or what have you. They're looking for those tangible takeaways that they could bring back to their institutions. And I'm not saying so much cookie cutter models, but ways that they could spark their creative ingenuity to say, okay, how can I really add value to my division or my institution? How can I become more of a strategic thinker within the context of my position within my university? How can I add value? And thus, how does that allow me to grow and expand my skill set for advancing my own professional career as well? So I think that it really comes full circle for our colleagues and for individuals who are reading this book to really just grow their knowledge base within GEM to become the best practitioners they can be.
That's amazing. In the few seconds we have left, how can folks get a hold of this book?
The best way for individuals to obtain a copy of this book would be first attending the NAGAP GEM Summit in April, and all attendees would receive a free copy by attending. And then also they can check out Routledge's website. Routledge is the publisher of the book, where they can learn more about the book itself and order a copy.
That's great. That's great. The book, A Comprehensive Guide to Graduate Enrollment Management, Advancing Research and Practice. And I've been joined by Dr. Joseph Paris, Dean of the School of Graduate and Professional Studies at Delaware Valley University, and Dr. Stanley Kania, Assistant Dean of Admissions and Assistant Professor in the Department of Family, Community, and Preventative Medicine at Drexel University College of Medicine. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thanks for having us, Ray.
The Mastering the Next podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Cadieux, J.C. Bonilla, Mallory Wilsey, Brendan Henkel, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.